maybe you can give us, first of course, your opinion on our general question, which we have here. But the second question is, how can we actually find a way to stop hate speech and evil media, make money in online advertisement?
Thanks so much. So my name is Imran Ahmed. I'm the CEO and founder of the Centre for Countering Digital Hate. I started doing this work 8 years ago because I used to work in British politics. I saw the rise of anti-Semitism in the political party that I was serving, the Labour Party. I worked on the referendum about whether or not the UK should remain in the EU, and I saw the rise of anti-Muslim, anti-black hatred, particularly conspiracy theories targeting those groups, but also the assassination of my colleague Jo Cox, who was a Member of Parliament, who was a 41-year-old mother of two, who was, and it bears repeating, in her constituency in the northwest of England, which is where I come from, a man shot, stabbed, and beat a small woman to death on the cobbled streets of her constituency because he had been so inculcated with lies that he thought it was the right thing to do. And this question of hate and lies is central to why we see there being a problem with social media. There are other issues, and what someone just spoke about exploitation. There are very strong issues, reasons to talk about that. You talked about climate and the energy needs of these platforms. So for some reasons that, username Big Balls can use ChatGPT to ask, are my balls actually big? We are burning rainforests. What a bizarre thing to choose to use our energy for. But really what it comes down to is lies and hate. And lies and hate are inextricably interlinked. Let's take the example of anti-Semitism. 2,000 years ago, it was the blood libel. Last century, it was the protocols of the Elders of Zion that informed Hitler's ideology. In the 21st century, it's the Great Replacement Theory, a version of which was responsible for my colleague Joe's death. But we can also see being promulgated by racists and dangerous neo-Nazis and anti-Semites today, which is leading directly to deaths. That ideology was behind the Christchurch massacre and also behind the Tree of Life synagogue massacre in Pittsburgh. So the question that we have is, why are these lies being given more prevalence in our information ecosystem? And that's the way that I look at it. I look at it through the question of, how is this hate spreading at such a rapid pace? Why is our information ecosystem, which is as fundamental to our human health as the food that we eat, why is our information ecosystem increasingly full of toxins? And much like so many of the questions that we ask ourselves these days, it's down to the impact of industrialization. The industrialization of our food, the industrialization of our information ecosystem. And the commercial imperatives, when unrestrained by sensible regulation that centers on what has always been the three pillars of sensible regulation, which is transparency in the public interest, accountability by people who have the knowledge to ask good questions, and the third is by economic responsibility being shared with the producers of whatever negative externality, as the economists call it, whatever problem is being created, that they should share some of the responsibility economically for fixing the problem. And that's how we've disincentivized and we've cleaned up and aligned various important industries in our liberal societies, in our capitalist market. These are, for better or for worse, these are market societies and market economies that we live in and democratic societies. That's how we align them with the public good, or try to shave off the externalities that would cause most harm. I think the final point I would make is that the speed with which we need to move is urgent. I'd bring up the point that Yael brought up, and Yael and I have known each other for some time. We've been working together for some time at the sharp end of creating real accountability. And Claire as well, I would just highlight as someone that's actually made a change in holding these companies accountable through exceptional research and exceptional communications and exceptional policy work as well. I would say that AI sharpens the problem for us, but we cannot forget that social media, the reason, I hear so often from senators and from Congress people, we got to get AI right because we screwed up on social media. No, get them both right. And both of them can be fixed by a system that puts transparency, accountability, and responsibility at its core. If not, here's the fundamental, and I'll finish with this, here's the fundamental issue. We spend a lot of time looking at the granular. I do as well. I look at individual families whose lives have been ruined because their child was fed disinformation about eating and nutrition and eating disorders, self-harm content. I speak to those parents. Those are one example, and they give me personally the impetus that I need to do the work. But at a macro level, we have created a system in which there is zero marginal cost. So there's zero cost for each additional message to each additional person, no matter whether it's true or not. And then we let anyone use it. Is anyone surprised that the system is going to be abused? Then we created AI, generative AI specifically, which reduces the only thing for which there was a cost, the production of a message itself, to zero. So if social media, by reducing to zero the marginal cost of each additional message to each additional person, allows for a nuclear explosion of disinformation, adding AI to it is the thermonuclear age. We are now in the thermonuclear age of lies and hate. And we can see the impact, can we not, in the world around us. The warning bells are measured in the hundreds of thousands of deaths of human beings unnecessarily as a result of this. Whether it's the Rohingya, or it's the people who died in the pandemic, or it's the people who will continue to die over the coming years in conflicts driven by hyperpolarization. Unless we deal with it now with alacrity, our democracies, our health, our mental health are all at risk.
Thank you. Is Claire sitting next to you and you mentioned her? Please.
Yeah, you said the word Breitbart, so I thought I should say something. Thank you for having me, and thank you for the shout out. I run Check My Ads. We put the call to action in the title of our organization because we need advertisers to check where their ads are going. I find 95% of the entire conversation about how social media and how the internet has radicalized people to be unfocused because it misses the entire point, which is that this is a financial marketplace where ads are a commodity. And of course, ads as a commodity has created a world where anything that gets more clicks, anything that gets more views, gets more ad revenue. I don't have to tell you that in this room. And we have understood that ads are a commodity for years. Let me flip it around though. The commodity is not the ad. The commodity is the ad space. Okay? I know that sounds esoteric. We have thousands and thousands of website owners who want to sell ad space. So what do? They need to come to market. Okay, they come to market and they don't do it themselves. They get technology middlemen to do it for them. Okay, so we've got small to medium technology companies that say, I'll get you ads. I'll get the best brands on your website. And then on the other side of the equation, you have advertisers, big brands, small brands, mom and pop shop that want to buy ad space. But they don't buy ad space themselves. They get middlemen to do it for them. They have middlemen come to market, technology companies like Google Ads, Pubmatic, Magnite, Triple Lift. These are companies that most people have never heard of, but they are traffic controlling ads and money and data and creating the world that we have today.
Should we regulate this with laws?
Yes, thank you for asking. Each of these middlemen come to the negotiation table and then they have a real-time bidding exchange. This is my entire point. It's a stock market. It's just
No matter if
like,
it's legal, illegal, bad, or good.
yes, it's a financial marketplace. Now, we're talking about hate speech here, we're talking about democracy, and that's all fine. But the advertisers are not in control of their own ads. Nobody knows this, but it's the most important critical thing. Is that we have to give advertisers back control. If you want to talk policy, I can list them out. I have 3 main ones, but I don't want to take up too much space. So
Maybe in a workshop. But I think what was interesting, what you guys did with Breitbart, you informed actually the companies that they're being advertised on Breitbart, and then they said, oh no, we don't want that, right? And then suddenly their turnover per quarter, I think, went down from 8 million to, I don't know, 2 or 3 million. So it was considerable.
Oh, Breitbart was going to make $8 million in 2017. Okay, 2016, Breitbart was enormous. They had more Facebook traffic than CNN.com and FoxNews.com. They claimed to have got Donald Trump elected, right? Hillary Clinton, victim number 1 of the disinformation economy, right? You remember Pizzagate? They were going to make $8 million in 2017, but my business partner would tweet at advertisers and say, hey, did you mean to be there? Old Navy, Nissan, Pepsi, did you mean to be on Breitbart? And over again, 4,000 said no. And 31 of Breitbart's 35 ad exchanges, those middlemen I was telling you about, decided to cut ties with Breitbart and Steve Bannon. And they lost 90% of that predicted revenue.
Wow. Speaking of Breitbart media, next to me is a gentleman who's, correct me if I'm incorrect, was the chief editor of the biggest newspaper and most important newspaper in Turkey. He was prosecuted, arrested. He's living in exile here in Berlin. Can Dündar.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm here to give you a personal testimony about how the big tech companies and how Elon Musk, in fact, uses power to control or to contribute to the autocrats in countries like Turkey, where there is no free media. So I live in exile here, so of course I don't have access to my country's media. So Twitter has been the only medium that I can get in touch with my followers in Turkey. So I have something like 5.5 million followers in Twitter. I used to have, at least. Of course, Erdogan, the president of Turkey, could not block or censor our messages in Twitter. That's why he declared kind of a war against Twitter mediums like Facebook, Twitter, and he promised to eradicate them all in Turkey back in 2014. But then Elon Musk took over, and shortly after buying Twitter, Elon Musk met with Erdogan in the World Cup final match, and Erdogan invited him to Turkey for investment. And there was a very critical election just after this meeting. And during the neck-to-neck campaign, Twitter's Global Affairs account announced on the eve of the Turkish elections that it would comply with the government's request to restrict access to certain accounts and messages. It was just before the elections. And they wrote that they were doing so to ensure that Twitter remains accessible to the people of Turkey. And Elon Musk translated this announcement like this. His explanation is that between shutting down Twitter and limiting access to some tweets, they choose the lesser of two evils. That means they had obviously chosen to compromise with Erdogan under the threat of total shutdown. And Erdogan narrowly won the election with a significant contribution of social media manipulations led by Twitter. And then Elon Musk met with Erdogan at the Turkish House in New York, September 2023, and discussed the option of establishing Tesla's 7th factory in Turkey. So we were the losers of this win-win game. And last October, 5 months ago, I learned that my Twitter account is not accessible from Turkey anymore. So even if I continue posting, my readers in Turkey would not reach them anymore. I asked the reason to Twitter, and I got this explanation afterwards. According to Turkish law, we are obliged to fulfill the administrative decision, not the court decision. We are obliged to fulfill the administrative decision within 4 hours after it is notified to us. This is the reply from X. So if one administrator, one governor, decide that this post is not suitable to Turkish law, X in 2 hours has to block it. If the government doesn't like one of your messages, of course, it can demand that your account be blocked without even a judicial decision. And according to this agreement, of course, X will implement this decision made an autocrat within 4 hours. And of course, it's very easy for the Turkish government to turn an administrative decision into a court judgment. A phone call to the judge is enough to make it legal, quote unquote. So our complaint to a higher court in Turkey was, as always, rejected. And now I have to go to the Constitutional Court to get my account back again. It may take years. And then I'll go to the European Court of Human Rights. It may take another couple of years. So in short, we have to find a way to get rid of those high-tech companies and leaders to defend the autocrats in our countries like Turkey, and we have to be in solidarity with others to gain our communication back from people like Elon Musk. Thank you.
There's no better example of how democracy can be destroyed and freedom of speech. We're running a bit out of time, so if maybe next 3 speakers can give us more of a general statement, 1 minute 30, if that's okay, and introduce yourself.
Sure, I'll be very quick. My name is Christian Broughton. I'm the Chief Executive of The Independent, which is a global news brand, big in the UK, big in the US particularly. Used to be the editor. We've had, it's terrible listening. I mean, it's good listening to your story, but it's also terrible. We've experienced the problems of operating under autocracies. We've experienced the problems of, and written about extensively, the problems of online hate. Journalists also get that stuff directed at them frequently, as ours have. I was editor for 5 years, particularly during moments like Brexit and like the first US election with Donald Trump. So we experienced lots of the challenges with big platforms and getting truth and trusted journalism to be present. And there's something that I learned through that experience, which is possibly sort of counter to a lot of what's been said on the stage. I completely agree with all the warnings that people have given, the environmental warning, the importance of self-determination of AI, everything. I don't dispute that. But I did want to land a message about why I think people should, if bad actors are going to be using technology, it's really important that good actors also get involved and don't let those opportunities pass them by. It would be lovely to think that if there's something we disagree with when a technology comes along, whether it's the Industrial Revolution or a social media platform or anything else, that by ignoring it, it would go away. And I think there are some great positives to be gained. You mentioned that there are 3 ways that we can interact with and potentially control AI. One was governmental, one was within the AI organizations themselves, And the third was with people, and that's with all of us. And I think human agency and human responsibility is a really important point to land. We've actually launched, we are in the process of launching a new news service that would be impossible without our own engagement with AI companies and with AI itself. And it's going to be called Bulletin, and it serves the purpose of getting verified, our own independent, verified journalism to readers in a way that's a great reader service. That's information, that's verified, proper information. It's free of hate, it's free of distortion. It's what we built our brand upon for 40 years and we care about very deeply. That will do good. We've seen how we can have campaigns for, whether it's for campaigning to promote or to raise awareness around issues of hunger or of distortion or of hatred.
And is it for you interesting to follow Rappler's or Maria Reza's example to think about your own social media platforms?
I think you have to be, you have to deal with the world as it is rather than the world you wish it would be. And I think that we've had enormous campaigns on Twitter that have achieved a huge amount for charity partners, for campaign groups. We've done the same thing on Facebook campaigns. There is a lot of good to be extracted from these platforms too. You have to be very aware of them. And you have to be aware of the pitfalls, of course, and you can't abdicate responsibility for your use on that platform. If something goes wrong with it, you can't just blame the platform. You have to hold your hand up and say, that was us. But I think there's something really big to be gained out of that, because I think if a lot of good actors start using technology, it actually increases the awareness and the kinds of problems. If we leave it entirely to government bodies, to UN-type organizations, or to massive tech companies to just deal with the problem, and we insulate ourselves from it, we don't really decide to engage with it, I think that we can't really understand the threats, we can't really understand the solutions either. So active participation, I would actually encourage. In order to create this tool, it was born, the journalistic tools that we're using for Bulletin, it was really born because we got sold out by a lot of companies saying, here's a load of stuff you could use in your newsroom to transform everything that you do. And our journalists didn't want to use that stuff because it seemed to address problems that weren't real and serve readers in ways that we didn't think readers wanted to be served. So we put the AI in the hands of the journalists because journalists are pretty good at thinking through journalism. And I think that's just one example of how, if that's with all the kind of checks and balances and responsibilities built in, if that were expanded, I think that's an important counterpoint to the requirement for regulation.
Thank you. Please.